This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. And welcome to my review of Batman Resurrection. This is a book that is intended to be a sequel to the 1989 Batman film, but also serve as a prequel to the 1992 Batman Returns film. So that's one of the most interesting parts of it, that it's set in between these two, and from what I can tell is the reason that it was that the author didn't want to mess with post Batman Returns timeline, which was covered in some comics, and that depicted Two Face's rise, the introduction of Robin, and the character of Barbara Gordon. So there are some references to those characters in this, specifically Barbara Gordon. I think it is a reference to their version of Robin, but I might be wrong about that because it's been a few months since I have read the 89 continuation comic. But just going into this specifically, honestly, it's just a really great book. As you heard, for the last 2 weeks, I've been saying I wanted to do this, but I wanted the time to talk about it because it's honestly just really great. It goes into something similar to Batman Returns, with it having two classic Batman villains, one of them serving as a full-on antagonist, and the other as a more sympathetic character and helping to set them up to be a better person in the future. It has, unlike the Penguin and Catwoman in Batman Returns, it has the characters of. Oh, and if you haven't read the book yet, there will be some major spoilers in this because it does have a twist villain, which it does make sense when looking back in hindsight, but it did surprise me the first time. It has Clayface as one of the characters, and that one was really predictable from basically the beginning, where before they even revealed he was going to use the name Basil Carlo as a stage name, I was fully under the assumption that he would be Clayface. And then it has a character first introduced as Hugh Auslander, but we eventually get revealed is actually Hugo Strange. And the twist with that, honestly, as I said, I think it does make sense when you start to look back on it, and when you start thinking about names of how close that is to kind of like Hugo Strange. I think they even mentioned in the book that Auslander is, I can't remember which language it was, but it was strange in another language. So if someone definitely knew that language, they would be able to see that this name is essentially Hugo Strange. But for me, I thought that he was just going to be some kind of like sympathetic character up until a certain point. I saw him being a villain once he started to help out Clayface after he seemingly murdered that one actor that he used to work with that he sort of hated because he caused him to become a Clayface. And after that point, I realized that, wait, this is like the only guy that could logically be the one that was manipulating Joker's henchmen. And at that point, I realized he probably was a villain, but still didn't see him being specifically Hugo Strange. I thought he was going to be some kind of original villain at that point. But with him being Hugo Strange, honestly, I really did enjoy that. Hugo Strange is a really interesting Batman character, and it is definitely interesting to see him adapted here. It's been cool to see as a movie also, since, as I said, Strange isn't used too often, and even when he is in like some of the more popular animated forms like Arkham City and Batman the Animated Series, he's taken out pretty quickly with him dying in Batman Arkham City and in the animated series. He has a single appearance, and after that, he is never really referenced or appears again, although it could have been interesting to have him put in the Cadmus arc, but ultimately he wasn't, and that is a little disappointing since, as I said, Strange is an interesting character. The only time I could think of him being significantly used was in Gotham, and that's my favorite version because he is one with the most development in terms of stuff outside of comics. But just going back to him in this one, honestly, was pretty interesting. They retcon him into the Batman '89 movie. It's also been a little bit since I have watched that movie, so I'm intending on a rewatch soon, but I'm currently in the end of the DCAU rewatch, so I'll be holding off on that for just a little bit more, but they say he is the one who created the chemicals that the Joker in that movie uses. The one's called, I believe it was Smilex, to go and create the main problem of that movie, which is that chemical poisoning that Batman does solve. But that was just a far more simple chemical compound that Strange created for the government, and he went into far more complicated and more deadly gases, including ones that could be used to turn people basically into mindless soldiers for him. I think I can think of most specifically as sort of an example is in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at season 3, what the being known as Hive created. So that's sort of like kind of what I imagine. It sort of looks like a mindless brute to attack people that really feels no pain. So it is kind of interesting in that account, but honestly, I think that it's just, it's just something to put in the story to make things a little more interesting and give another tie-in to the Batman movie. I can't remember if in that movie, as I said, if a scientist working at Ace Chemicals goes and helps out Joker, or really acts as chemicals in that because I never really understood why they call that place Ace Chemical, didn't call that place Ace Chemicals since that's, what the place is called in the comics, but just going through but everything else. Clayface was really interesting in this. He was just a normal, kind of good person who just had some of the worst luck possible. And when we eventually just get to him being manipulated, he's doing worse and worse stuff, including impersonating the Joker to make people think he is alive. And that's really just used to get Hugo Strange an army of people loyal to the Joker. And yeah, see, that's interesting. There's also the return of the character Vicky Vale in this. This doesn't fully go into their breakup between Bruce and Vicky, but it does basically mention the reasons of her thinking that Bruce is going a little too far as being Batman, and it's essentially an obsession. But she returns because they think that the Joker genuinely has returned, and with that, they sort of realize that she would be a target for the Joker since she was inside of the Batman movie. So with that, they go and have the character of Alexander Knox reach out to her to tell her to hide, but she realizes the safest place is to be with Batman. So she does return for the end of this movie, and the end point is that Hugo Strange actually captures her and Alfred basically as ransom and to use them against Bruce Wayne, since he could be used to get either money or a way out of the city, and then I think he's just going to transform them into monsters to have Batman deal with them, but Batman is able to save them. And Strange actually has this gas he created used on him, turning him into sort of a mindless zombie, but like a zombie-like character, not like undead zombie. But that's probably like the way I was trying to think of earlier to best describe. They're sort of like zombies that could be controlled by someone, and they also don't have the zombie thing of like passing on the zombie virus unless they're exposed to this gas. But honestly, it is just pretty interesting with that, and Strange is a just really interesting antagonist in this. As I said, I really love the character, and I'm glad they actually had him as a villain in this, since serves as a pretty interesting villain. It also does a little bit to further develop the character of Max Schreck from Batman Returns, and just the funny thing is, because of the movie Shrek, I always think of him first whenever they talk about this character, and obviously Shrek came out about a decade after this movie, so it's just a coincidence. And I mean the movie, I know though it was based off a book, so that book still would have came out after this, from what I could tell. But again, I haven't really looked at specifics about the book in years for Shrek, so it's just, one of those funny coincidences. And just whenever they talk about this character, I automatically think of the Ogre Shrek. Just more of a, a funny thing to think about. But, as I said, this book has just so many interesting things in it, and also has really just them dealing with the aftermath of the Joker, showing stuff that he caused and why people were, well, what happened to people who were affected by his chemical weapon that managed to survive it. And ultimately, it was a really just enjoyable story. It is definitely a entertaining one and has just some of the most interesting and kind of dark moments, but I think that they definitely did a great job with it. I highly recommend you to check it out, and I want to know what you think. Have you read this book? Have you not? And wanted to learn about it? So please let me know in the comments, and also on the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.